Hello, and welcome to this episode of the K&Co Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Shelley Kramer, Principal Analyst here at Kramer&Co. And today we are talking about the evolution of the ERP, which for Tracy in Iowa is Business Management Platform, officially known as Enterprise Resource Planning. And props to you if you caught my Tracy in Iowa reference. That means that, like me, you're a fan of the Smartless podcast. And if not, you're missing out. So, for decades, ERPs have been viewed as a necessary back office system, not sexy or exciting by any stretch of the imagination, but really critical to business success, albeit often behind the scenes. That reality is changing. Today's ERPs are evolving into strategic enablers of performance, resilience, and business growth. And that's what we're talking about today. I'm joined for this conversation by Ali Jani, the Chief Product Officer for Acumatica. As I mentioned, we're going to discuss the evolution of ERP and what's driving that today. We're also going to explore how Acumatica is rethinking ERP from the ground up and trying to balance the push for disruptive, leading edge innovation with the need to solve real world business problems. We'll also dive into why open and flexible platforms are the key to future-proofing business tech, what continuous innovation looks like when it's built into the DNA of a company, and so much more. Ali, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. Okay, let's dive in here. One of my favorite parts of this series, Ali, I think I mentioned this to you earlier, is I love to ask my guests to share a little bit about their career backstory. So will you indulge me a little bit on that front?
Sure. Interesting that you ask. So I've been doing ERP a little bit over 30 years, believe it or not. But how I started my career, first of all, I'm an electrical engineer and computer scientist from my education. But when I came out of school, I had worked for top tier companies, done internships with companies like Intel. Was really into electronics and computers in general at the time in the early 90s. And then I decided that I wanted to make sure we work on software. But in order to fund my software business, I decided to sell my home computer that I was using at school, and I put an ad on the classified, and I came in the next morning and I saw a big line outside of all these people who wanted to come and buy my piece of junk computer that I thought was kind of useless. So I thought to myself, this is a good way to pay for rent while I work on software. So long and behold, all of a sudden, over the next 18 months, the company that manufactured PCs at the time that I started grew to be well over 300 employees, doing over $20 million of business, with manufacturing with over 30,000 PCs annually. But in order to do that, every minute that I spent building this manufacturing company that was into computers, every day I thought about, well, how can I get out of this business? Because my heart was in software. And every time my employees would come up and ask me questions like, hey, can I sell this at this price? Can I do X, Y, Z? I was like, hey, why can't the software answer that for you? Instead of me having to. So we built our own piece of software because we tried solutions at the time like Solomon and ACPAC and DAC Easy, all these accounting-centric solutions at the time.
Right.
And there was no solution that could do all the things that we wanted to do because we were in computers. We needed to track things like serial numbers. Inventory management was really, really critical for us. Customer management was critical for us on how we do quoting to customers and so on. So we ended up being a computer scientist. We decided to build integrations and a front-end system to other accounting systems. And that's what really fueled the growth of my computer manufacturing business. And it grew so rapidly that my heart was really in the software. So I decided to sell the electronics manufacturing business so I could focus on what became ERP. So that's how I started. But they say necessity is mother of all inventions. So
Right.
really it started that way because simply these accounting systems was not enough. And then from there on, I've always been on the leading edge of building ERP systems, and I founded 3 other ERP companies prior to this one. And but where we are today is the best ride yet in the last 15 years.
Well, that's an awesome story. And now you know exactly why I asked that question because everybody's journey is always so interesting and it always plays a part in, you know, how they are where they are today. So thank you for indulging me.
That's right.
All right, Ali, I think it's safe to say that today's business leaders are always challenged to strike the right balance between embracing innovation and delivering those real world practical solutions that are so important. But today, in a world where tech is evolving truly at the speed of light. I think that's more challenging than ever before. And I doubt that I'll get any argument from you on that front.
That's
So
right.
so talk with me about that need for balance and the rapidly evolving, technology sector and how embracing innovation is really it's so important, but it's also challenging. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, like you said, I mean, world's definitely moving a lot faster than ever before, and that's going to continue. It's not
Right.
something that's going to stop, especially with all the new technologies that are evolving so rapidly.
Well, and it's
But I
going to
think,
speed up too.
yeah,
I think that's
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. I think over the next 5 years, we'll probably do as much as we did in the last 25 years.
Right.
So it's certainly going to continue to speed up. But uh, in order for you to stay ahead of your competition, that's what competition in the world of competition is so great, is because it forces you to innovate. And the
Right.
ones that don't innovate get left behind. In order to uh, outdo your competition, you have to not only think about your creative ideas, but how do you execute on them? And in order to execute on them, it is important to invest in a solution that's going to help you operationalize. I mentioned to you how I struggled with getting into software and I had to operationalize things so it would be automated. So automation is key to scalability. So
Right.
if you want to grow, it's an area you have to think about investing so that you can do that. Now with ERP, the challenge has always been that it's always been a productivity tool. It's been an automation tool. It's been a kind of a focus on that area. But I think as you mentioned in your podcast and title, it's we think of it a lot more as performance and growth.
Right.
Operational aspects are given, but really shifting your mindset and thinking about as you're progressing and the right balance is it going to help you feel your real growth or not? And if the answer is yes, then I think you should do it.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think to me, a really important part of this conversation has to do with, when we talk about the need for innovation and embracing innovation, that also means embracing something that we humans are inherently typically not very good at, which is change. And I think that's a big part of what it is that business leaders are challenged by because internally things are evolving within an organization just as rapidly within your organization as they are with your customers, right? And so I think that to me, creating a culture of innovation and helping educate teams about the reality of continuous change being a part of our world moving forward indefinitely. I think that's an important key to success. What do you think about that?
So I completely agree. I mean, change is always the biggest challenge, and
Yeah,
sometimes you get people don't recognize the need to change
yeah,
until it's brought upon them from the outside world. Sometimes it happens with generations. We see a lot of companies who have family businesses that have grown over the years, and then the younger son comes in who is much more tech savvy, and all of a sudden wants to introduce change and say, "How come we're doing this thing the old way? Why
yeah,
can't we think of a new way?" So being in search of new ways to approach problems, how to tackle the challenges in new ways you've never thought about, thinking outside the box. Certainly, it's very, very difficult, but that's also the opportunity. So
right.
that's your opportunity to also be different and be different than your competitors, because
Right.
chances are many of your competitors also have struggled with change.
Yeah.
And the ones that are able to tackle that well are the ones that are probably going to be ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I always feel I am a believer that when it comes to much of our personality traits and characteristics, that to some degree we kind of get what we get in terms of the hands that we're dealt. And I have always been very grateful that I am wired for change. I love change. I've always loved change, and I think that that serves me well. For I mean, it's played a big role in my business success. Drives my husband crazy on a regular basis. But I do think that sort of setting, if you're not somebody who happens to be weird like me and loves change, I think sort of trying to learn over time to rewire yourself and to be open to and interested in and acceptable to change, because I think that that really is, as you mentioned, that's the competitive advantage right there.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big opportunity there
Yeah.
when you have that mindset, or you can get yourself to that mindset.
Yeah, let me add to that, because I think, I think we're all afraid of losing control. So
Yeah.
when change brings something new that we're not used to, and we feel out of control. And I think if you balance, hey, not being reckless, nobody wants to be reckless with
Right.
change. So I think you should embrace change if you feel like you can stay in control.
Yeah.
And I think, ERP actually brings that. So when you think about the why ERP, because a lot of times people grow so fast, they use a lot of point solutions,
Yeah.
they rapidly grow, but they don't think about all the pieces that it can impact. Like, hey, I've got an e-commerce site and it's going to go crazy, and I can, grow the ERP, but are you profitable or not? Are you?
Right.
So as long as you can think about change in a sense of, hey, I'm going to introduce change, but I'm going to stay in control, I think that's a healthy change.
Yeah, no, a great point. Great point. So, as we've talked, ERP systems have long been viewed as kind of back office systems, maybe a little bit boring, important to have. But now we're seeing them evolve into platforms that really play a significant role, or can play a significant role in business operations. And they can help drive performance, build business resilience, and also help drive growth. And this is really kind of a major shift. So, how do you see Acumatica helping to redefine what ERP means for the modern enterprise?
Yeah. This is a really good question, because the world's changing. We talked about the change, but what that means is each of us are probably doing a lot more than we did before. Like, businesses are getting complex.
Sure.
So when the complexity that we run in with, it's much, much higher. Like, whether it's compliance, whether it's different modes of operations that you do. Maybe you did only sold parts, but now you have to service them. Maybe you're doing a lot of distribution, but then you wanted to get direct to consumer. So there's lots of shifts in industries. Like, what distributors used to be distributors, now they're all retailers. Everybody's a retailer all the time.
Right.
Manufacturers are going direct to consumer. So we've become all much more full service type of organizations as a whole. So that's driving a lot of complexity. Maybe you have to manage returns you never had to do before. So you have to innovate out of that, and that complexity brings a lot of these challenges. So not only do you have to think about how do I operationalize all these pieces together, you're also working with a lot of different systems. Like, if you are having to deal with consumers directly that you never had to do before, all of a sudden you need to think about, okay, what is my front end is going to look like, and so
Right.
on. So it's no longer like, hey, let me just plug in this hole, and paper and pencil will no longer, spreadsheets no longer do. So you end up having to do point solutions. You have to start integrating them together, and then you have data silos that fall data into different environments. So you're always tackling these challenges that business complexity brings. And I think the way Acumatica approached the problem was like, hey, how do we convert this, and how do we create not just a solution, but a platform that brings all this stuff together in a unified manner, but it's still very connected with all the best of breed applications built in. So instead of you having to rely on a third party to plug something into your system,
Right.
how is your ERP vendor connected to all these systems and works in concert with them? How is it open? How does it expand over time? How does it protect you about the future? So as your business operations continue to change, the system can change with you. So that's kind of like was our forte, to think about um, not just the next 3, 4 years, because typically when you buy ERP systems, most companies switch ERP systems every 7 to 10 years.
Hmm.
Our goal was, how do we change that so that they don't have to switch over the next 30 years, 40 years?
Right.
And in essence, what we call future proofing. So if you can future proof your business, which means you have to be extremely adaptable, you have to have connectivity and openness, and of course, you have to be modern, because if your product gets old, then you have to change it anyway. So those are
Right.
the key elements of how we think Acumatica approaches the problem a little bit differently.
You know, I'm thinking about, we were just talking about change and innovation, and continuous innovation is super critical today, and I think plays an important role in what you were just talking about. Um, you know, talk with me about, and this is, to me, continuous innovation is how you can be in a position as a business leader to make a decision to buy, whether it's to add anything to your tech stack, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's an ERP or anything else. But um, the way, when you embrace continuous innovation and when you work with vendors who also embrace continuous innovation, I think that makes making those buying decisions somewhat easier. And I would love for you to talk with me a little bit, Ari, about what continuous innovation looks like in practice for you and your team at Acumatica.
Yeah.
And then talk with me about what you and your team do to help ensure that translates, that continuous innovation that you embrace. How does that translate into value for your
Yeah.
customers?
Yeah. So I think when you look at the top tier, most successful companies in general, and if you ask them, what makes you succeed so well, a lot of them will say it's our people, right? And when you think about, how do you empower every individual in the company um, to come in and innovate along with you? This is typically the challenge where only a few people in the company are allowed to innovate, and those individuals are typically in the IT groups of the companies, because they're working on systems, they're working on figuring out how to get scalability out of the company and so on. Sure, the CEO and so on, the leadership team typically sets up strategy and long-term vision of the company, but the executional aspects to innovate special processes, how do you go differently about approaching for how you become more efficient, typically is done by only a few folks.
Right.
So, the way I've always succeeded is like, how do I put the power in the hands of everyone? How do I democratize technology so that there is no IT bottlenecks? And if you can do that, I think it'll help you succeed with innovation, being very, very, very innovative, because now you no longer have, these walls driven, and you can involve everyone. And this is something that is very dear and heart to me, because involving everyone is actually a very key thing that is completely opposite of how most ERP systems are built, because they're licensed typically based on number of users.
Right.
And you want to try to save money, and you say, okay, let me just buy number of licenses that I need for just the few people that are going to use this.
Yeah.
But if we change that paradigm, and if you can involve everyone, then you'll innovate faster.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I, like every analyst in the space today, focus a lot on AI. And, I have many conversations with enterprise business leaders who are charged with developing AI strategies and rolling out AI throughout organizations. And to a one, the success comes from exactly what you just said, Ari, and it is democratizing it, welcoming everybody to be a part of these initiatives and to play a role and to experiment and to bring their ideas and their suggestions and all that sort of thing. So I think your point makes perfect sense.
And we don't do it just in fact, don't think about just the four walls of your business.
Yeah.
You got to also include your vendors and your customers in that
Yeah.
too. Like, everything we build is actually comes from our customers, right?
Yeah.
We innovate together. We in fact, our tagline is we built the future of business together. So really it's about, how do you bring everybody together? Because the more you have together, the better aligned you are and the better success you're going to have building and innovating.
Yeah, I agree. I love it. So you touched on this a minute ago, but I want to dive a little bit more deeply into this, Ari. The future of ERP seems to depend on platforms that are open and flexible and able to seamlessly integrate new technologies. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Right.
Why is that openness so terribly critical?
Yeah. So when you think about the promise of ERP, it's always been about adaptability, and it can fit, your business, models, right? What makes you different than other companies is your differences. And if you're different, sure, there's best practices, but it's that extra 20%, 80% you get out of the box. But what is that 20% that you do that's unique to you, that sets you apart? Typically with ERP, you would have to customize, do a lot of these types of capabilities that would actually cost you in the long term, because those changes that you make wouldn't come along with you. You would build up what we call technology debt, and over time you would get left behind. Even though you would succeed short term, long term you would get left behind because now you've got an aging system.
Right.
So when you think about technologies that can stay modern, help you still adapt to your business, but not get left behind, I think that's the key to really success on, the exact point that you talked about.
Yeah.
So it has to be open, it has to be able to be adaptable, and it has to be migratable and propagate so that you don't get left behind. So those are the key elements.
And this, if I'm not mistaken, this has played a big role in how you and your team have developed Acumatica's architecture. So, talk with me a little bit about how that architecture was purpose built to help customers be in that future ready state.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to go back to my roots when I told you that I've been doing this for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I founded multiple ERP companies, and always the challenge was, okay, the technology has gotten old. Now we got to redo it. And when I came to Acumatica, when we started Acumatica, I came in before we had our first customer. I joined the company because I said, okay, I'll join under one condition, that we're not just an ERP company. We have to be a platform company, and the platform has to remain fresh. So what that meant was, like, when you think about platform companies, those are the ones that last. Those are the ones that really make it. Because if you have a platform that's architected correctly, and I'll talk about the Acumatic architecture in a second, it'll help you build any kind of a business management solution on top, right? So yeah, we happen to build ERP. We built our platform, then we built our ERP on top, and we decided to build, certain components like, okay, CRM, financials, and then we went to industry specific. But the platform is a key component, because that's what gives you consistency, adaptability, configurability, the open integrations, AI first technologies. Those are part of the platform that we keep modern. And our goal was always, when you think about the legacy systems I talked about, they helped you customize, but you got left behind. And in the
Right.
SaaS world, it was the opposite. You would get on the latest version of the product, but you couldn't adapt. So our goal was always, how do we deliver all the benefits of SaaS solution without its traditional drawbacks? So that's where the platform came into picture, and we purpose built a product that was built for the cloud, that had adaptability in mind. It had user experience in mind, because you talked about early in our conversations how it was always these systems that were for back office. How do we
Right.
bring it to the front office? How do we involve everybody to use it? And how do we make sure they're on the latest version of the product? So we achieved that goal with our platform that we built.
Yeah. Very interesting. I love the rationale behind that architecture. So now I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball and you look ahead for the next handful of years, what do you see as the biggest shifts coming for business management platforms?
Yeah, I'm sure everybody's already thinking in their head. Of course, he's going to say AI, but certainly AI has
Right.
a big role. But it's not, to me, it's not so much about AI, but how do we interact with the business management solution? We talked a lot today already about how to involve everybody, but you got to make it so it's easy for everybody to use it. And what we say, we want people to love using the system, not just use the system. So in order to do that, you have to embrace the technologies and what's coming. Certainly in AI world, and some of you may have already heard agentic AIs and how
Sure.
they will perform tasks for you and so on. Of course, it comes at a price of uh, making sure they're doing the job correctly and not necessarily trusting every piece of things that they do. But I do think fundamentally, over the next 3 years, it will change how we interact and use AI systems, much like we all used phones, and we went to smartphones, and
Yeah.
we started using touch screens, and we started using Siri. I think in the business world, how we use systems, being very keyboard intensive, transactional base, I think we're going to be relying a lot more on assignment of tasks, automation,
Yeah.
things that get done by the system automatically. In fact, the system will come out to you and ask questions instead of you asking the system questions.
Right.
So the roles kind of get reversed of we become the helper of the system instead of the system being a helper of us. And that's, I think, a big shift we're going to see over the next 3 years.
Yeah, and I love thinking about the user experience because it plays such a huge role here. And I know that you know this, but there are some gigantic ERP companies out there. And it's funny, my husband works for a Fortune 100 company, and when I hear him using an ERP system and how frustrated he gets at the lack of a great user experience and how that plays a role in how people are productive, how they can do their jobs, how they feel about the
Mm.
systems that are being integrated into the business technology stack and all that sort of thing. So to me, I think that key is
Yeah,
thinking about a user experience and making it, as you said, something that people actually enjoy using. And
mm,
I think that's kind of a game changer.
yeah, it is. And they come from them. So when you think about point solutions,
Yeah.
like if you use, I don't know, Shopify or some point solution, generally they've always had good user interfaces and people like using them. But as soon as you
Right.
switch to the ERP world, the world changes. You get lots of restrictions, your UI
Yeah.
looks clunky, and
Yeah.
you feel like you've gone back into the dark ages.
Yeah.
So I think we change that. And by providing uniformity, personalized experience, AI assist, those things will really change how you feel about using an ERP because you feel like the system's working for you instead of you working for it.
Yeah, or working against you, which is
Yeah.
sometimes the case, which is what's happening when I'm listening to my husband in his office complain.
That's right.
So, as we wrap this episode, I would love for you to share a piece of guidance for CIOs, CTOs, and business leaders who are evaluating ERP and business management platforms today. What are the must have capabilities they should prioritize as they think about and they're developing their strategies, and really working to drive long term business resilience and growth?
Yes, so I think you said most of it actually in your sentence. So, number one, I think you got to involve everyone.
Yeah,
You got to get buy-in because ERP systems are hard. And if you don't have buy-in across the board, you can't shove it down people's throats because it's
sure.
just they're going to put up walls of using it. So, but getting it out of just being a CFO decision because it typically comes from there
Right,
because they don't have visibility into profitability very well and
right.
control comes back to the control discussion. So getting everybody involved so they can all understand what's in it for them and how it's going to improve their life in the process is critical.
Yeah,
Number two, remember you're not buying a system for just this year or next year. You're buying it for potentially your next several decades. Uh, So can the software grow with you? What happens when you're twice the size of what you are today, five
Right.
times the size today? So think about, where your trajectory is long term, not just short term. And then finally, I think uh, going back to the licensing model, uh, make sure you're working with a company that's aligned with you, so that as you grow, they also have part in the success versus you trying to figure out where to save money and then it's stifling your growth. So just having alignment on all aspects of your business with whoever vendor you choose is going to be key.
Yeah, and I think, really, this is not a one and done business decision. I always look at these these are long-term business relationships. So you want to work with a company that you like and believe in, with people, working alongside people that you like and trust and believe in. And I kind of feel like approaching it as we're in this together for the long haul is really what we see broadly as the key to business success, which is really what you said.
That's right. That's right. And that's why like we at Acumatica anyway, we have a channel partner network, and we break them up based on their expertise, business expertise. So if you're a distribution company, you want to work with somebody who understands distribution, who understands your nomenclature. You don't want necessarily a generic solution. So
Right.
having industry focus and domain expertise in your business,
Yeah.
somebody who can be consultative to you, not just somebody who writes a piece of paper. So it's going to be key. So just because, like you said, they're going to be your business partner for a long time. At least somebody that you can go and get consulting from. So
Right.
that's a key aspect. It's and don't try to do everything yourself. I mean, if you try to do everything yourself, then you can't run your business.
Right.
So leave the software to the people who are good at software, and then you are good at running your business. So that's what you should focus
I love it. Great advice. Great advice for leaders for sure. Well, that's it for this episode of the K&Co Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Shelley Kramer. Thanks to my guest, Ali Jani, the Chief Product Officer for Acumatica, for joining me today to take a dive into the evolution of the ERP and for sharing his insights into what he and the team at Acumatica are doing to help customers be future ready. Thank you so much for joining me, Ali. It's been a
on.
wonderful conversation.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, to our viewing and listening audience, that's it for today, and we'll see you here next time.